Good day, all my favorite vagabonds and disciples. Welcome back to the den. So, recently, I found myself trying to distance myself away from all the stuff happening over at Bungie, with everything going on with Destiny. I was kind of completely drained. And I've kind of been glad that there was a substitute I could turn to, that being Warframe. I've always tried to get into Warframe. I've struggled to do it, seeing the massive grind and at the beginning of the game kind of being too overpowered for me to truly enjoy it. But what got me really into Warframe finally was looking at its overall arching story of being somewhat of this lone warrior now trying to preserve balance in a universe that technically they were responsible for setting into chaos and discord, but I digress. I've truly found myself enjoying Warframe to a great degree. Being into the whole warrior culture, warrior archetype stuff, I really felt like Warframe was something I could really sink my teeth into and truly enjoy. And the story is something so rich, so mysterious that there's just so much to go over and so much to look at. And the Tenno themselves are just so interesting. The way they fight, the actual individual warframes, their lore, their culture. And that's when I actually got it started thinking. Culture. Why do the Tenno have culture? Why do they actually have a warrior caste? And I say this because as I've gone through the lore, it really makes no sense for the Tenno to have culture, for them to have lore. Hell, for them to even be warriors. One of the big things that DE used to promote Warframe was ninjas play free. And yes, a large amount of the Warframes would fit the ninja description. I think one of the best examples would be Ashe. Ashe is perfectly a ninja. Other Warframes would be like Mag, Loki. I would even say they fit even they're just their body shape and everything. They would fit more into the ninja archetype, but they're not all ninjas. Excalibur, specifically my Excalibur and Umbra, they're more samurai and Ronin like specifically. Frost, a lot of like hell, my Frost looks like a freaking Viking. Limbo's British. Mag's literally, I mean, sorry, not Mag. Mirage is literally a court jester with deadly attacks. Honestly, yes, she's more of a ninja, but if still, it's just the archetype of them. Haro's literally just a priest. He's about to pray for your soul. He's about to pray to the void that they have pity on you. Atlas is straight up the rock, and so on and so on. Mesa's literally a cowgirl. So, how did this happen? Yes, I know each of the warframes were designed probably with their combat utilization in mind. But when you look at everything that the Warframes and specifically the Tenno have going on, you have the Tenno schools, their teachings, but then you also have things like Ballas really always not really liking them. Ballas created them, yes, but I don't think that from what we've seen of Ballas, he was the kind of guy who would say, "Yeah, I'm gonna let these guys create a bunch of culture, like ideas, religions, their own weapons and technology. Yeah, this isn't going to backfire whatsoever." Not even that. The other aspect of it is, as we know, the Warframes aren't really the ones who are in control. It's the operator, the Tenno. Children of the Zeramin. Emphasis on children. What do children know about being warriors? What do children know about music, about the arts? Sure, they can have an idea of it, but not to the extent that it really Warframe is saying that they had. So my big question is, who exactly helped make the Tenno the Tenno? How did they develop everything they have and it was a so culture so much able that it even survived the collapse of the Orkin. That's what we'll be going over today in this video. Alrighty, first things first. Obviously, we can chalk up a lot of things to just cool ideas, and which is cool. Yeah, these are all neat ideas. The outfits, the costumes, the shawaz. I can't pronounce it. Shawazing, shazing, the guitar thingy. These are all could just be cool little mechanics and ideas and cosmetics. But I would love if there was a lore reason, so that's kind of like what we'll be discussing today. Now, there are two likely candidates for why the Warframes turned out the way they did. Also, before we get into anything, I want to put a heavy spoiler warning. I don't know if you're watching this and you haven't just played Warframe or just haven't gotten around to any of the major story quests, but spoiler warnings ahead. So the two likely candidates for obviously the Warframes being as they are ironically the two individuals who kind of dawn on the role of the parent to the Tenno. That being Teshin and the Lotus. And yes, if anything, I do consider Teshin to be like the dad who's just never around, but who shows up out of nowhere, gives some fatherly advice, does some cool stuff, and then disappears. The reason I do believe Teshin had a role to play into how the Tenno developed and became their own kind of warrior culture is because, for the most part, the Tenno, specifically the Warframes themselves, were Dax, and most likely Dax. For those of you who don't know, Ballas basically took the mechanical infestation and created a more neutralized version of it, in simpler terms, to create a super weapon, ergo the Warframes. Now, from what we saw from the sacrifice quests, this is how Umbra was created. Umbra was a little bit more free-minded and had gone berserk, which is actually what happened to a lot of the other Warframes that were created. They went insane. The modifications done to their bodies while they were fast, while they had skin as strong as steel, it had just driven them on the brink of insanity, and thus, ergo, not really capable of being warriors, simply just being weapons. Sure, you could have just, if be given time, Ballas probably could have just dumbed them down and made them mindless drones, but that wouldn't have worked against the enemy that they were fighting, an enemy that could adapt easily to everything that was thrown at them. So what to do? What to do? Here comes in the operators, the orphan children of the Zeraman. These children, granted their void powers, were able to quell and calm down the madness within the Warframes, becoming the second half to the whole, creating balance and creating a warrior within. Now, an important aspect of this is the Warframe would be the body, but the Tenno is the mind. Now, from what we've seen from the sacrifice quest, our operator was able to see into Umbra's mind. He was able to see into Umbra's memories. So it shouldn't be that difficult to believe that the operator would now have access to their combat skills and talents. Sure, I'm imagining it was a very difficult and rocky process, learning to bullet jump, slide, properly use a weapon and gun, but in a body that was already a seasonedly trained warrior, I don't think that would have been that difficult. Now, from what we know from the War Within quest and with Teshin, we know that the Dax weren't really free either. Sure, it seemed from what we saw in Sacrifice that yes, they had their own culture. They played music. They had art. The Orkans had a big idea on luxury and beauty. And this isn't anything that should surprise anybody. We see it in almost every level that has anything to do with Orkan. White pillars, a lot of gold lining everywhere, truly luxurious and glamorous stuff. And the Dax, even though they were their servants and personal guard to the Orkin, it didn't seem like they fell too far behind. And I think there's something there that we should pay attention to. The Dax, despite being kind of like this slave, mind controlled police force, forced to do the bidding of anybody with Kuva in their blood, still were given the ability to have their own culture, to have their own lives, to play things like to learn things like Go. They were granted the opportunity to still be themselves, even if they were subservient. And I'm sure that the children, the operators, looked at this and learned from their new Dax. They learned from their other halves. They learned from the Dax part of their Warframe to develop their own culture and weapons. But this still doesn't explain why some of the Warframes are the way they are. You see, if all the Tenno were just supposed to just be improved, upgraded Dax, then why do we have things like Haro? Why do we have things like Mesa? Aside from being cool ideas, how did they come into fruition? What was the idea behind them becoming what they are? And I think if we move away from Teshin and the Dax for a second, we have our secondary parent and likely candidate for why the Tenno came out the way they did, and that being the Lotus. The Lotus dawns on the role of the Tenno's mother. After Margulis' death and after Natal's conversion into the Lotus, she cared greatly for the children and acted as their surrogate mother. The Tenno, in turn, were most likely at this point given what I'm considering their culture. You see, the children were more or less to be used as instruments of war. The Orokin described them a lot as demons. Many of them even they already feared the children. Giving them the Warframes only made them much more of a feared force. But if they had culture, and teachings, and an idea of philosophy, dualism, which apparently the Orokin originally had a strong belief system centered around dualism but abandoned, then how did the Tenno adapt and acquire it? And I think that stems from the Orokin. And I think it stems greatly from one specific line. Dream not of what you are, but what you want to be. And I think this applies greatly into the children. I think because we've all been that little kid who's dreamed of being a knight in shining armor. We've all seen the movie 300 and thought, yeah, I want to be a Spartan. We've all wanted to play cowboys and Indians. Maybe I wanted to be an Indian more than I wanted to be a cowboy. We've dreamed of being pirates, ninjas, samurais, so on and so on. Perhaps the Lotus encouraged this in the Tenno. Perhaps the Lotus allowed the children to dream of what they wanted to be, of the kind of warriors they wanted to be, without Ballast really interfering in this, without the Orokin truly caring about this. The Tenno were able to evolve into something new, evolve into becoming a better version of the Orokin, taking everything that was actually good about their society while removing the bad. A true warrior society focused on the ideas of balance and harmony. It's just a little bit surprising to see that this was not achieved by anybody with a mature mind, but children who have now lived hundreds of years and now are thrusted into conflicts and expected to resolve them. But they can resolve them because they have their teachings. They have the Tenno ways. They have the warrior mindset. Whether I'm right with this assessment that Teshin and the Lotus are responsible for the Tenno being what they are today might be a long shot. Obviously, Teshin's now gone, and there's still so much mystery behind his character. Even now with the latest Lotus Eater quest, we see that there's still more to the Lotus than meets the eye. And only time will reveal what's true and what's not. As I stated before, Warframe's a game that still has so much mystery behind it. There's almost so much we don't know about the Tenno, about the orc, and about the void and the man behind the wall, about how all this really came to be. We're given tidbits of information here and there. But I think that's one of the biggest things that drew me to this game. You don't have all the answers. You have your guns, you have your blade, and you have your objective. Balance and peace. Protecting those who could not protect themselves. And if the Tenno are the ones to bring balance to the origin system, then by my blade, it will be done. Thank you for coming. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. My next video I'll be working on is a little bit more of a philosophy piece. If you're into characters like Miguel O'Hara, Batman, and even Billy Butcher, you'll enjoy. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And remember, walk your own paths in life.